Grace lifted the teacup to her lips, but something made her stop. The smell was strange. It wasn't the soft, familiar aroma of the tea she drank every morning before work. This was sharper, bitter, like medicine crushed into powder. Her hand stayed steady, but inside, her heart gave a hard thump. She glanced up and saw Emily watching her. 16 years old, her only child, standing by the counter with her arms crossed and eyes that didn't blink. Grace forced a small smile and brought the cup closer. She tilted it, letting the tea touch her lips, but she didn't drink. She just pretended to swallow. Emily's gaze didn't move. It was too focused, too expectant, like she was waiting for something to happen. Grace set the cup down gently, her fingers cold. "Thank you, sweetheart," she said softly. Her voice sounded normal, but her pulse roared in her ears. Was she imagining things? No. She had been a nurse for 20 years. She knew the smell of crushed pills. And now it was floating in her morning tea. Her stomach tightened. This was Emily, her daughter. The little girl who used to run into her arms after school, hair flying, cheeks bright. The child she had worked double shifts for, skipped meals for, given her whole life for. And now this? Grace felt her throat close up, not from poison, but from something worse, fear and betrayal. Emily looked away, busying herself with her phone, as if nothing had happened. Grace studied her carefully, every movement, every breath. The sweet, warm child she had known was gone, replaced by someone colder, harder, and possibly dangerous. Should she say something right now? Slam the cup down, demand an explanation, shout, "What have you done?" No, not yet. Grace swallowed her anger and her terror, burying them deep where Emily couldn't see. She couldn't let her daughter know she suspected anything. Not until she was sure. Not until she understood. She picked up the cup again, pretending to take another sip. Her eyes never left Emily's face. And in that quiet kitchen, lit by the pale morning sun, Grace heard her own voice whispering inside her head. "My own daughter wants me dead." But why? Grace was a single mother and a hard-working nurse. For 16 years, her life had revolved around her daughter, Emily. Grace worked long hours in the hospital, sometimes through the night, to make sure Emily had everything she needed. A good home, food on the table, school supplies, even little birthday surprises. Everyone respected Grace for her dedication. But behind her calm smile, she was always tired, always running on empty. Grace had given up many things for Emily. She never went out with friends, never took vacations, never even thought of dating again after her marriage ended. Every choice she made was for her daughter. She believed it was worth it. Emily was her world. But Emily had changed. She used to be a sweet, loving child who followed Grace around the house, chattering about school and friends. They used to laugh together in the kitchen while baking cookies. Emily used to hug her mother for no reason, whispering, "I love you, Mom." Now at 16, Emily barely spoke to her. She kept her door locked, her headphones in, and her eyes cold. When Grace asked about her day, Emily gave short answers or none at all. She had become secretive, staying out late, hiding her phone, snapping at Grace over the smallest things. Worst of all, Emily blamed Grace for their broken family. Grace's marriage to Daniel, Emily's father, had been full of pain. Daniel was charming to strangers but cruel at home. He lied, cheated, and hurt Grace in ways Emily never truly saw. After years of betrayal and abuse, Grace finally left him to protect herself and her daughter. But Emily didn't see it that way. She missed her father and believed his stories. Daniel told her that Grace had pushed him away, that Grace had ruined everything. Emily clung to that idea. She secretly idolized her father, the man who had abandoned them, and looked at her mother as the villain. Grace tried to explain. She told Emily about the shouting, the lies, the fear. But Emily refused to listen. To her, Daniel was the fun parent who bought gifts when he visited, while Grace was the strict, tired parent who worked too much. The tension in their home was heavy, like a storm waiting to break. Grace could feel her daughter slipping through her fingers, no matter how hard she held on. Grace had already lost her husband. Though calling Daniel lost felt strange, he hadn't been a loss at all, more like a wound that finally healed when she walked away. But now she faced something worse. She was losing her daughter's love, her trust, and maybe even her daughter herself. Some nights, after long shifts at the hospital, Grace sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at old photographs. Pictures of Emily as a toddler, covered in birthday cake frosting. Emily at age 10, holding Grace's hand proudly on the first day of school. Back then, their bond felt unbreakable. Now it felt like a rope fraying one strand at a time. Grace told herself teenage rebellion was normal. But deep down she sensed something darker. Emily's anger wasn't just about rules or curfews. It was sharper, heavier, almost hateful. Grace feared that Daniel's poisonous influence had sunk deeper than she realized. If he could turn Emily against her mother with words, what else could he make her do? Grace didn't know the full answer yet, but she felt it in her bones. This was no ordinary mother-daughter fight. Something far more dangerous was growing inside her only child. And if she wasn't careful, she could lose Emily forever. Or worse. Grace followed her suspicion the next morning. She woke up earlier than usual and stayed quiet, pretending to be asleep when she heard Emily moving around in the kitchen. Slowly, she tiptoed down the hallway and peeked through the small opening of the door. Her heart froze. Emily was standing at the counter with a small bottle in her hand, carefully crushing pills with the back of a spoon. She poured the powder into a cup of tea and stirred it quickly before setting the spoon aside. Grace felt sick. She wanted to rush in and grab the cup, shout at Emily, demand to know why. But she didn't. She stepped back into the shadows and waited until Emily called out, "Mom, your tea is ready." When Grace walked in, she kept her face calm. She picked up the cup, pretending not to notice anything strange. She lifted it to her lips and took a fake sip while Emily watched her closely. "Thanks, sweetheart," Grace said softly, forcing a smile. "You're so thoughtful these days." Emily shrugged, her expression unreadable. Grace decided to test her. "You know, I've been feeling a bit off lately. Dizzy sometimes. Do you think it's the tea?" Emily's eyes narrowed. "You're imagining things, Mom. You're always paranoid. Always controlling everything I do." The words stung, but Grace didn't respond. She just nodded slowly, hiding her fear. Later that afternoon, while Emily was in the shower, Grace saw her daughter's phone buzzing on the table. The screen lit up with a message. Did she drink it? The name made Grace's stomach drop. It was Daniel, Emily's father. Grace unlocked the phone with quick, shaking hands. The messages told her everything. "She deserves it. She's keeping us apart. Just make sure she takes it every morning. Once she's gone, we'll finally be together." Grace felt like the ground vanished beneath her feet. Daniel, the man who had betrayed her, the man she had escaped to protect Emily, was now using their daughter as a weapon. He had convinced Emily that Grace was the enemy. Tears blurred her vision, but she kept scrolling, each word cutting deeper than the last. Emily called her mother cold and selfish. Daniel promised Emily that once Grace was out of the way he would take care of her, that they'd live like a real family again. Grace's hands trembled. She wanted to scream, to throw the phone across the room. But she took a deep breath and put it back exactly where she found it. Emily couldn't know she had read those messages. Not yet. Her heart ached with a pain sharper than fear. Her own daughter, poisoned by lies, was trying to kill her. And Daniel, always cruel, always cunning, had planted the idea. Grace wiped her eyes and looked at herself in the mirror. She whispered, "You will not win, Daniel. I will not let you take her from me. And I will not let you kill me." The discovery broke her heart, but it also lit a fire inside her. Grace had survived Daniel once. She would survive him again, for Emily's sake. And this time she would fight back. Grace started a careful routine. Each morning, she allowed Emily to pour the tea, lift it to her lips, and watch her closely. Grace pretended to drink, tilting the cup, letting the warmth brush her lips. But each time, she secretly poured the tea down the sink when Emily wasn't looking. It was exhausting work, but it kept her alive and gave her a chance to understand what was happening to her daughter. At first, Emily seemed confused. Her eyes would narrow suspiciously, and sometimes her hands trembled when she poured the tea. But as the days passed, she became more aggressive. She would glare at Grace, mutter under her breath, slam doors, and sometimes refuse to speak. The house was full of cold silence, broken only by Emily's sharp, cutting words. Grace spent the quiet moments thinking about Emily as a child. She remembered her daughter's soft laughter, the way she clung to her at bedtime, the little hand that once fit perfectly in hers. She remembered painting sessions, bedtime stories, and Emily's first day at school, when tears ran down both their cheeks. She felt a pang of sadness mixed with guilt. What had happened to that sweet, trusting girl? How had her daughter become so full of anger and hate? She realized that Daniel's influence had poisoned her daughter's mind. Emily had grown up idolizing her absent father, even though he had been cruel and unfaithful. The little girl who had once loved her mother unconditionally now saw Grace as the villain, the obstacle keeping her from real happiness with Daniel. One afternoon, Grace made a decision. She had to confront Daniel. She couldn't just wait for Emily to figure out the truth on her own. She drove to his office, heart pounding, hands tight on the steering wheel. When Daniel's assistant let her in, she walked straight to his desk without hesitation. Daniel looked up from his papers and smirked. "Grace," he said, his tone smooth, as if she had no power here. "I wasn't expecting you." "I need to talk to you about Emily," Grace said firmly, keeping her voice steady. Daniel leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Ah yes, Emily. You've done a wonderful job, haven't you? Turning her against me completely." His smirk widened. Grace felt her blood boil. "You're manipulating her. You've poisoned her mind against me. She's my daughter. I won't let you use her like this." Daniel laughed softly, leaning forward, his fingers steepled. "Poisoned? Grace, she's just seeing the truth. You've done enough to push her away. I'm only helping her realize it. You should thank me." The words hit Grace like a punch. Daniel had not only abandoned them, but he was now actively hurting Emily, turning her against her mother, weaponizing her innocence. She realized the battle she was facing was not just for her own safety, but for Emily's mind and heart. Back home, things worsened. Emily began catching on. She noticed Grace's careful movements, the way she drank the tea a little differently each day. One evening, as Grace reached for the cup, Emily's sharp voice cut through the air. "I know you're not drinking it," Emily shouted, eyes blazing with betrayal and fury. "I hate you. I wish you were dead." Grace froze, her heart breaking at the sound. She wanted to rush forward, to hug her daughter, to tell her it would be okay. But she stayed silent, feeling a mix of horror and sorrow. The words were like knives, but she understood that Emily was not fully herself. She was being controlled, twisted by Daniel's lies. After Emily stormed off to her room, Grace sank into the living room chair and let her body shake. Tears rolled down her cheeks, and she felt the weight of exhaustion settle deep in her bones. But amid the despair, a small ember of resolve glowed. She would not give up. She would not let her daughter be lost to Daniel's manipulation. She would protect her, even if it broke her heart every day. The following mornings became a careful dance. Grace watched Emily closely, keeping track of every movement, every gesture. She recorded details, took notes mentally, and prepared for the day when she would need to confront the truth openly. Each time Emily glared, screamed, or tried to intimidate her, Grace held herself steady, reminding herself that this was bigger than fear or anger. It was about saving her daughter. At night, Grace would replay memories of Emily's laughter, her first steps, the tiny joys of their life together before Daniel's shadow fell over them. Those memories were her anchor. They reminded her of who Emily really was, the sweet, loving girl hidden beneath anger and lies. Grace made a promise to herself. She would fight, not just for her life, but for Emily's soul. She would protect her daughter from Daniel's poison, literal and emotional. And no matter how difficult or painful the journey, she would not give up. Every sip of fake tea, every silent observation, every quiet moment of fear and love, it was all part of the plan. Grace would win this war, and she would save her daughter, one careful step at a time. One morning, Emily poured the tea and set it in front of Grace, her eyes flashing with a mix of challenge and triumph. "Drink it," she demanded sharply, folding her arms. "I know you've been pretending. I want to see you drink it now." Grace picked up the cup slowly, holding it as if she were about to sip. She tilted it toward her lips, letting Emily watch closely. Her heart pounded, but she stayed calm on the outside. This time, though, Emily didn't wait for her mother to finish the pretend sip. Her voice snapped like a whip. I know you're not drinking it," Emily screamed, pushing the cup back toward Grace. "Stop lying. I see what you're doing." The words hit Grace like a physical blow. She took a deep breath, fighting the panic rising inside her. She placed the cup down carefully and looked Emily in the eyes, holding her daughter's gaze with steady determination. "Emily, we need to talk." "Really talk?" she said softly, though the tension in her voice made Emily flinch. Emily's chest heaved with anger. "Talk? You think you can stop me? I'm tired of your lies, Mom. You're trying to control me, just like always." Grace shook her head. "No, Emily. This isn't about control. I know what you've been doing. The tea, the pills, the messages from Daniel. I know he's been manipulating you." Emily's face twisted in disbelief and rage. "You're lying. He's my father. He wouldn't hurt me. You're the one who's trying to ruin everything." Grace's heart ached at her daughter's words. She knew the truth would be hard for Emily to accept, but she had to show her. "Emily, look at this," Grace said, pulling out her phone. She handed it to her daughter, showing screenshots of the text messages between Emily and Daniel. Messages filled with lies, manipulation, and instructions for Emily to act against her mother. Emily's eyes widened, but she shook her head violently. "That's fake. You made that up." Grace didn't flinch. She pulled out more evidence. Legal records proving Daniel's custody battles, police reports detailing his abuse, and documents showing his lies to everyone, including Emily. "This isn't fake, Emily. He's been using you. He doesn't care about you. He's only trying to hurt me, and he's been convincing you to help him." Emily turned away, covering her face with her hands, shaking. No, that can't be true. He loves me." "He wouldn't." Grace stepped closer, her voice trembling but firm. "I know you love him. I know you want to believe him. But you're being used, Emily. I need you to see the truth. I need you to see him for who he really is." The room fell silent except for Emily's quiet sobs. Slowly, she lowered her hands, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her anger began to break apart, replaced by confusion, pain, and a flicker of understanding. I don't know what to think," Emily whispered, her voice cracking. I love him, but why would he do this?" Grace took her daughter's hands gently in hers. "Because he wants to control you, Emily. He wants to hurt me, and he thought he could use you as a weapon. But you don't have to let him. You can choose who you want to be. You can choose me, and we can face this together." Emily's shoulders shook as she sobbed harder, torn between the father she loved and the truth her mother revealed. Grace held her, whispering softly, letting her daughter cry, finally letting some of the fear and anger melt away. For the first time in months, the tension that had filled the house seemed to release, leaving behind the fragile, painful truth. Emily's hands clung to her mother, as if seeking an anchor in the storm. Grace whispered gently, "I'm here, Emily. I've never left you. I'll never leave you. We'll get through this together." Emily's sobs continued, but they were mixed with quiet realization. She still loved her father, but the cracks in her belief were opening wider, letting the truth seep in. And in that moment, Grace knew the hardest battle had begun. The battle to heal her daughter's heart and reclaim the love and trust that Daniel had tried to destroy. The confrontation ended not with anger, but with tears, trembling hands, and the fragile beginning of hope. The war wasn't over, but for the first time, Grace could see a path forward, a path to saving her daughter from the shadow of her father's lies. Grace took Emily to therapy the very next week. At first, Emily sat stiffly on the couch, arms crossed, refusing to speak. She didn't trust anyone, not even the therapist. Grace watched quietly, her heart aching, but she didn't push. She knew healing couldn't be forced. "I know this feels strange," Grace whispered to Emily after their first session. "But talking to someone who understands can help you, not punish you." Slowly, Emily began to open up. At first, it was small things, a memory of a childhood birthday, a moment when she had felt scared or sad. Then, with time, she started to talk about Daniel, about the messages, the lies, and the pressure he put on her to act against her mother. Tears flowed freely, but Grace held her hand, letting her daughter release the anger she had been carrying for months. At the same time, Grace contacted a lawyer and started legal action against Daniel. The charges were serious: coercion, emotional manipulation, and child endangerment. She documented everything: the texts, the pills, the evidence of Daniel's abuse and manipulation. Grace knew she had to protect her daughter completely, and the law would help. Emily resisted at first. "He's my father. You can't do this," she shouted during one of their sessions. Grace's voice was steady. "I know you love him, Emily. But love doesn't mean letting someone use you or hurt you. We're doing this to protect you, so you can choose your own life, your own happiness. It wasn't easy. Emily still struggled with the conflicting feelings of love, loyalty, and betrayal. But as therapy continued, she began to understand. She began to see that her mother had always protected her, even when she didn't know it, and that Daniel had used her anger and confusion against her. Grace balanced firmness with compassion every day. She didn't ignore Emily's anger or fear, but she also didn't let her slide back into destructive patterns. Together, they set boundaries, learned to communicate honestly, and rebuilt the trust that had been broken. Small victories mattered. A shared laugh over breakfast, Emily asking for advice, or a quiet conversation before bed. Meanwhile, Daniel's lies and manipulations were exposed publicly. His messages, the pills, and his abusive behavior came to light through the legal process. His reputation crumbled, and people who once supported him turned away. Grace didn't celebrate the humiliation, but she felt a quiet vindication. Justice had been done, and the danger was gone. For Grace, the greatest reward wasn't the legal victory. It was Emily slowly coming back to her, opening her heart again, and learning to trust. They spent hours together, talking, crying, and even laughing. Grace encouraged Emily to set her own limits, to speak her mind, and to value honesty and love over fear and manipulation. Healing wasn't instant. There were setbacks, angry outbursts, and moments of doubt. But each step forward mattered. Each moment of truth and connection was a brick in the foundation of a new, stronger relationship. One afternoon, Emily hugged her mother tightly, whispering, "I'm sorry for everything. I want us to be okay." Grace held her close, tears streaming down her face. "We are okay, Emily. And we will keep getting better together." By facing the danger, the lies, and the emotional wounds, Grace and Emily began to rebuild their lives. The fear that had once threatened to destroy them faded, replaced by trust, love, and hope. Grace had saved her daughter from harm, but more importantly, she had given her the tools to reclaim her own life, strong, brave, and free. The road ahead would still have challenges, but for the first time in a long time, Grace and Emily walked it hand in hand, ready to face the future together. Grace and Emily sat at the breakfast table. The sunlight poured through the kitchen window, making the room warm and calm. Emily carefully poured tea into Grace's cup. For a moment, Grace felt a flash of old fear, but she pushed it aside. This time, she lifted the cup and drank without hesitation. Emily watched her mother closely. Her hands trembled slightly as she whispered, "I'm sorry, Mom." Grace put the cup down and reached across the table, taking Emily's hand. A long silence stretched between them. No words could fix everything, but the quiet felt full of understanding. Finally, Grace spoke softly, "We'll be okay. One sip at a time." Emily nodded, her eyes glistening. She didn't say anything more, but Grace could feel the weight between them beginning to lift. The anger, the fear, the betrayal. It was still there, but smaller now, softer. They sat together, hands touching, sipping tea, letting the moment settle. The house felt lighter, warmer. Grace realized that the battle they had fought had left scars, but it had also brought them closer. Grace smiled gently at Emily. "We're getting there," she said. Emily returned the smile, small but real. For the first time in months, Grace felt hope that everything broken could slowly be repaired. Love was starting to mend the wound. One quiet moment, one sip at a time. Hey friends, thanks for sticking around until the end. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See you next time.